You won't believe the shocking underground strategy migrants are using to outsmart border security.
The US-Mexico border has turned into a battlefield.
In order to bypass this wall, authorities say traffickers dug the longest cross-border tunnel ever.
Mexican cartels are forced underground to smuggle deadly drugs and other contraband into the United States.
When Trump stormed back into office in January 2025, his crackdown on Mexican migrants was swift and merciless. Panic swept through communities as thousands faced the terrifying reality of deportation, or worse. With nowhere to turn, many of them made the desperate choice to escape at any cost.
6 people are under arrest tonight after U.S. authorities discovered a drug tunnel between San Diego and Tijuana. The tunnel, the length of 6 football fields and 6 stories below ground, has rail tracks, ventilation, and electricity.
But their methods are unlike anything seen before. They've been digging an underground network beneath the border, tunnels, not just crude holes in the ground, but elaborate passageways equipped with rail systems, ventilation, and even wood-paneled floors. More of these hidden corridors are being discovered every day, a testament to the lengths people will go to for survival. Above ground, the patrols grow more aggressive, and the consequences of getting caught are grimmer than ever. But for these migrants, there are only 2 choices: adapt or disappear.
They're very well funded, and they'll try any means they can to get their illicit cargo into the United States.
Border Patrol isn't ruling out that the tunnel was used for human smuggling, too.
The US-Mexico border has become a war zone, not a war of weapons, but of survival. With Trump's return to office in January 2025, his crackdown on illegal immigration has reignited fear and desperation among thousands. The result? A shocking new underground strategy migrants are using to outsmart border security. Trump's hardline stance on immigration is nothing new. Back in 2016, one of his key campaign promises was simple: build the wall. And during his campaign for presidency for his first term in office, he pushed for that, promising to build a wall and make Mexico pay for it.
We're going to build the wall. We have no choice. We have no choice. We have a trade deficit with Mexico of $58 billion a year, and that doesn't include all the drugs that are pouring across and destroying our country. We're going to make them pay for that wall.
But here's what really happened.
I'm not going to pay for that wall. He should pay for it. He's got the money.
Mexico never paid for the wall. Instead, Trump authorized billions in funding to go to building the wall and extending it by hundreds of miles. But despite his best efforts, illegal crossings continued.
As efforts to strengthen security on our southern border increase, Mexican cartels are forced underground to smuggle deadly drugs and other contraband into the United States.
The wall wasn't enough. Migrants found ways around it through gaps, ladders, and even underground tunnels. By 2020, over 180 tunnels had been discovered along the US-Mexico border.
6 people are under arrest tonight after U.S. authorities discovered a drug tunnel between San Diego and Tijuana. The tunnel, the length of 6 football fields and 6 stories below ground, has rail tracks, ventilation, and electricity. Law enforcement seized more than 1,700 pounds of cocaine. As the U.S. attorney said, there's no more light at the end of this narco tunnel.
That promise became the defining symbol of his presidency. He painted immigration as a national crisis, warning that waves of undocumented migrants were bringing crime, drugs, and economic strain to American workers. And then there was the wall. Trump's signature campaign promise faced legal and financial hurdles from the start. He demanded billions in funding from Congress, leading to the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. When Congress refused to fully fund it, he declared a national emergency to redirect military funds. But the reality was different. Not only did Mexico not foot the bill for the wall, but by the end of Trump's term, only about 450 miles of border wall had been constructed, much of it replacing older barriers rather than extending new ones. And despite his claims, the wall was far from impenetrable.
This is a spot where Border Patrol dug down to actually go inside that tunnel. It stretches all the way from Tijuana, Mexico to Otay Mesa, and it's 70 feet below the surface.
The discovered tunnels stretch from Mexico into Arizona with lighting, ventilation, and even a rail system for moving contraband.
They're very well funded, and they'll try any means they can to get their illicit cargo into the United States.
Border Patrol isn't ruling out that the tunnel was used for human smuggling, too.
One of the tunnels was crude, dug by hand with pickaxes. Others, however, were state-of-the-art, complete with electric lighting, hydraulic trapdoors, and reinforced walls. They were engineering marvels of crime.
Well, U.S. and Mexican officials discovering a secret tunnel in Mexico near the border wall with the help of drones last month. Mexican police call it a narco tunnel used for trafficking drugs and people into the U.S.
That was in 2020, during his first term in office. Fast forward to 2025, and even worse have been found.
The administration is threatening mass deportations of millions of illegals already in this country. How that would pan out and happen.
Tunnels weren't Trump's only concern. You see, Trump wanted to make America great again, and he felt getting illegal immigrants out of the country was the way to do that. For Trump, the border was more than just a political issue. It was a symbol of control, power, and protection. He claimed illegal immigrants were bringing crime and drugs into the country, vowing to stop them by any means necessary. So he launched the most aggressive deportation efforts in decades via Twitter, ordering ICE to track down and remove millions of undocumented immigrants.
President Donald Trump tweeted Monday that Immigration and Customs Enforcement will begin removing millions of immigrants who are in the U.S. illegally.
By the time Trump left office in 2021, his administration had deported more than 1 million people, leaving behind ghost towns in immigrant communities. But then he came back.
In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
When Trump launched his comeback campaign in 2024, his message was even more extreme than before. He vowed to complete the wall, reinstate family separations, and deport millions fast.
Always have known that this was not the end. It was only the beginning of our fight to rescue the American dream.
His campaign centered around what he called the largest domestic deportation operation in American history. He promised to use local law enforcement, mass roundups, and expanded ICE operations to remove every undocumented migrant from the U.S.
And on day one, I will launch the largest deportation program of criminals in American history. We're going to get them out. We have to.
And yet, despite his extreme rhetoric against their community, Trump gained an unexpected voting bloc: Hispanic Americans. A surprising number of Hispanic Americans voted for Trump in 2024, driven by concerns over crime, border security, and the economy.
Why did you choose Trump this time?
For me, security, immigration, this situation with immigration is out of control.
Many believed his policies would only target new arrivals, not established immigrants, but they were wrong. Now, with mass deportations in full force, many Hispanic Trump voters are facing a harsh reality. Friends, neighbors, even family members are being detained and sent away.
Military deportation flights are the most visible sign of Donald Trump's hard turn on immigration.
As Trump's policies take effect, the desperation grows. Thousands of people are fleeing, but thousands more are fighting to come back. And when the wall is too high and the patrols too strong, there is only one way left to get across.
It's the third time one of these tunnels was found near Yuma, Arizona last year.
At this point, it's clear that Trump's second coming will be even worse on immigration than his first term in office. From the moment he was sworn into office, Trump launched a sweeping crackdown, deploying thousands of additional Border Patrol agents, expanding ICE raids, and introducing his infamous zero-tolerance policy that led to thousands of family separations. His policies have sparked outrage amongst the American people, but that hasn't stopped Trump. He defended it, insisting that tough measures were the only way to stop illegal immigration. And yet, despite these efforts, the border still remains unsafe. Migrants are still finding ways in, some climbing over, others slipping through gaps. But the most sophisticated operations weren't happening above ground. They were happening beneath it.
You won't believe the shocking underground strategy migrants are using to outsmart border security.
For decades, these tunnels were primarily used by cartels to smuggle drugs into the U.S. But as Trump ramped up border security, something changed. The cartel shifted gears and began using them for human smuggling operations.
One of the most sophisticated tunnels we've seen in the United States, just because the material used to build it and the terrain that it had to traverse through, it makes it really special. This tunnel in particular had a wood pallet floor the whole way of the tunnel, and it had a rail system running through it as well.
While Trump focused on the wall, Mexican cartels were building an empire. The cartel industry had become one of the largest employers in Mexico, operating not just at the border, but deep within the country.
Violent drug cartels are now Mexico's 5th largest employer. They're operating right along the southern border, but also inside of Mexico.
In one recent operation, U.S. and Mexican authorities discovered a tunnel near the border wall with the help of drones. Mexican police call it a narco tunnel, used for trafficking both drugs and people into the U.S.
But as far as the tunnels, I mean, we have this refrain in the military. We say amateurs talk strategy, but professionals talk logistics. And what you see on the border is some of the most advanced logistical networks that are that the cartels build because they're powered by massive amounts of money. I mean, you have the global drug industry that's $360 billion.
These cartels are desperate. They're desperate to restart their operations, and they have the money. Money buys innovation, the best engineers, the latest technology, and most importantly, it buys power over law enforcement.
Massive amounts of money. I mean, you have the global drug industry that's $360 billion, the human trafficking industry that's $240 billion. I mean, the amount of money that's being poured into these illicit enterprises is giving them all the best technologies to go around law enforcement.
And the Mexican government isn't helping. Don't get me wrong, they're perfectly happy going after low-level operatives, but when it's time to bring down the big leagues, that's when they stop cooperating with the U.S.
Well, you know, we've had good cooperation with Mexican authorities on tactical issues. What happens is when you want to get to strategic issues or when you want to get to very high level against the Mexican cartels, that collaboration tends to break down.
But now, with a new administration in Mexico and Trump back in power, some experts are hopeful that cooperation can improve. But the experts are also ringing the alarm bells, warning us that the real battle is not about strategy. It's about cutting off the cartel's ability to move their products and people.
This is going to be a major challenge, I think, for both the Mexican government and the new Trump administration. And they need to focus on this logistics because it's the logistics that powers it, just like it does in a war.
Since the cartels now operate like the army, it's easy to figure out their strategy and where to hit them the hardest. In this case, the cartel's logistics, their tunnels, their smuggling routes, their safe houses are what keep them in business.
The supply lines power the militaries. In this case, the logistics power the cartels and allows them to do all the stuff that they do.
So, what can the US and Mexico do to finally get rid of the cartels? According to experts, both countries have their own parts to play in this war. Mexico, on the one hand, needs to fight back against becoming a narco state, as experts predict it's becoming.
Would turn Mexico into a narco state. Is that where we're at right now? If they're the 5th largest employer, that's insane.
No, that's 100% the direction that Mexico's going. This is a tremendous concern. We cannot afford for Mexico to become a Venezuela.
Now, unlike Venezuela, Mexico is right next door to the US. They also share a border, which is why the US needs to step in and handle these cartels before they get out of hand and turn Mexico into a narco state.
It's our neighbor, it's our trade partner, and we share a very long border.
The cartel is spreading like wildfire, and we can't afford for that to open. They recruit over 350 men per day for their army, and people are joining because, quite frankly, they pay better than most in Mexico does.
And that's what's happening on these border towns. The incentives are aligning so that the illicit enterprise is dominating the free enterprise. And not to mention our open border. Open border basically just gave all the money, all the incentives into the illicit enterprise. And that's why we have the problem that we have today.
Now, as Trump returned to power in 2025, he vowed to complete the wall, reinstate mass deportations, and destroy cartel networks operating beneath the surface. But no matter how much concrete was poured, no matter how many patrols were sent out, the tunnels kept appearing. The US-Mexico border had become a game of cat and mouse, except the mice were armed with millions of dollars and high-tech engineering.
In that beige garage is a multi-million-dollar hole in the ground, and we're about to stuff ourselves into it.
My God, is it dark and claustrophobic in here, and this is terrifying.
We are the only news team ever to go down that hole.
So that's the spike that my head nearly just went through.
Crab walking our way down a giant former smuggling tunnel between the U.S. and Mexico.
This particular tunnel isn't the first of its kind to be found. Several tunnels have been discovered underneath the surface.
The question, they say, isn't whether there are more tunnels, but how many and where.
The tunnels are also not new. They've been around since El Chapo first took over the reins of the Sinaloa cartel. He wanted to build a network of tunnels that led directly into the US to make smuggling easier, and he did. However, perhaps his most famous interaction with his famous tunnels is when he broke out of the Mexican prison, where he had his army build a tunnel leading out through the sewage system.
busted out of the Altiplano prison near Mexico City earlier this year by having his comrades brazenly tunnel right into his prison cell. A tunnel even fitted out with a motorcycle on a rail. Notorious not only for his narrow escapes and prison breaks, but for the elaborate cross-border tunnels his cartel has engineered. Some, like this tunnel discovered last year near San Diego, are thousands of feet long.
These tunnels are so many, and the authorities have not even scratched the surface of what's available out there.
The job of finding them goes to the human moles of the Customs and Border Protection tunnel team.
You guys took the training, right?
Yeah. Tasked with the sometimes deadly job of sniffing out the tunnels, honeycombing the 2,000-mile-long border with Mexico.
What's crazy is that there's a tunnel right here, and then there's a tunnel 20 feet behind. I mean, so there are 3 tunnels within a space of a year in 15 feet.
And the cartels aren't just building these tunnels, they're going to great lengths to hide them, and most importantly, keep them hidden.
Out of the 180-some tunnels found so far along the U.S.-Mexico border, 107 were discovered right here in the city of Nogales. Dozens of them within a football field of where we're standing.
Your concealing methods are just creative. It's creativity. It's that simple.
Those engineers also use the massive and fetid drainage system between the two sides of the border.
The tunnels are a sophisticated network of tunnels that don't just deliver you to U.S. soil, but promise to get you into the U.S. safely.
So what they did is they chipped this wall out and they crawled through here with the bundles, and they followed the wall around the bend through the double gates, and then they came out in a pipe just north of the north gate.
Detecting them is nearly impossible. Like the one here in Naco, Arizona. It's in a retirement community carved neatly into the floor of a garage along this quiet street.
Looking at this house, would you ever think that there's a highly sophisticated tunnel right through there?
You could drive by it 1,000,000 times and not have any clue.
In one of the tunnels, authorities found a perfectly hidden trapdoor that can be operated from 1,000 feet away in Mexico.
Topping off this ruse is this engineering gem, a trap door operated hydraulically from 1,000 feet away in Mexico. It's perfectly camouflaged with the garage floor.
The best part, the trapdoor can only be used once per time. Once it's been closed, it'll cave in on itself, thereby blocking anybody else from just walking in. The air in the tunnels is thin, and the cockroaches big.
But before we duck in, the one ground rule.
The rule is not to touch anything because it's caved in behind you and there's no way back out.
Once inside, the air is in short supply, so they have to pump it in. And what little air there is feels syrupy.
And the cockroaches are pretty pink.
Well, the cockroaches too.
But making it through the trapdoor is not a guarantee that you'll make it to U.S. soil. So many things stand between them and American air.
And our nearly hour inside the tunnel, there's some fear it could cave in.
You can see the plywood ceiling on here is all just rotted away. It just caved in.
Okay, so right now, just walk right here.
You just walk gently through here. You don't want to touch the walls or anything.
But then, the cartels also provided some entertainment that might act as an incentive for the migrants crossing the border.
We see artifacts and what passes for entertainment.
Tunnel?
Finally, we reach the end of the tunnel.
The battle at the border is far from over. For every tunnel discovered, another one is being dug. For every migrant deported, more risk their lives to return. And as Trump's crackdown escalates, so does the desperation.
Now there's a large group of migrants that just crossed in up here that got dropped off that are on their way. Look, there's the van. Look. Now watch. We're gonna watch this operation in real time, folks. You won't get this anywhere else. You will not get this anywhere else, folks. Come on in. And look, there's another group of migrants right here that just crossed in illegally.
Trump's immigration agenda was built on the promise of law and order. But at what cost? Families have been torn apart, entire communities erased, and as America tightens its grip, those left on the other side are forced into more dangerous, more desperate measures. This isn't just about people crossing illegally. It's about an underground network so sophisticated that we may never truly be able to shut it down. The real question isn't whether more tunnels exist, it's how many and how far are people willing to go to chase the American dream. Hey, thanks for watching. What do you think? Is Trump's approach to gangs going to finally free America from its clutches, or could it make things even worse? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that matter. Catch you soon. Stay safe.